I love it that you don't refer to yourself as a composer. You refer to yourself as a musician. Now, folks probably know you in a lot of different ways. Some people probably might think you're only a singer. In A Roomful of Teeth, they hear you sing. They think, well, you can't be that good unless that's your whole life. And then they hear you play violin, and they think, well, she must just be a violinist. And people who've heard your works and know what you've done as a composer, and yet you choose to refer to yourself only as a musician. Why?
Part of it is, for me specifically, kind of works to encompass everything that I do, but I also like that the implications that it has kind of in the music world. It's just a very inclusive word. So it's not just a part of the classical music world, but even other traditions where the musician is the composer, is the writer, is the improviser, is the performer. And I think it just opens the gate a little bit.
I was having a conversation with someone about you the other day, and they were saying, this really is the new model. I mean, Caroline is an accomplished string player, an accomplished singer, an accomplished composer, and that's kind of the new model. And I kind of chuckled and said, actually new, just like Mozart, because this is kind of the old model, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Eric was talking about that earlier. It is kind of an older model. And so there's Mozart and even a lot of composers earlier than that.
Yeah, and so in a way, we've come full circle. I think that we really went down the path as the 20th century evolved, that the performance specialist, we're going to know ever narrower sections of music better and better and deeper and deeper. And now we've kind of walked away from that a bit. Now we're much more the Renaissance person.
Yeah, I mean, there's something also very beautiful about specializing and the kind of very detailed sort of an ornate, like a detailed ornate sense of life that you can have as a specialist. If you play the oboe and you know every single thing about that, it's a really beautiful thing. And someone who's creating for that can create a specific kind of art. But I work in maybe it's just a slightly different aesthetic. I kind of move around. So.
And do they influence each other? So, do you often find yourself as a violinist thinking, how would I approach this as a vocalist, or as a composer, hearing it more from a string versus a vocal? I mean, do they intersect?
Well, there's a piece that we did. Can I pause for a sec? There's past tense that we're going to do tonight. Yeah. That we did here at DePauw called Ritornello. That I. It was actually sort of an interesting experiment for myself.
Right, there's two versions.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it was just basically a month after the Pulitzer announcement, and my life was a little bit crazy for a while. And someone proposed this idea of you have 2 nights of your music. And I said, well, what if one night is with Roomful of Teeth, and one night, the next day I'll play with Acme. I played in a string quartet. And what if I wrote the same piece for both groups and they're separate? And what if I made a film that kind of ties it together? So it was an interesting challenge to write music that works, that is vocal music that works for strings, and string music that works for voices. So kind of thinking about what I do, imposing these little restrictions on it, but also it opens up a different world.
So, and let's use that piece as an example.
Yeah.
Does it work better in your own mind? Now that you get to hear it both ways, does it work better one way or the other? Or is it truly that piece that can go anywhere it wants to go?
I think it's a piece that's going to go, it'll expand kind of like an accordion. I think much, much larger. I'm going to combine actually strings and voices later on and some other ideas.
So when you sit down to write now, is it more that I'm sitting down so that I can write this commissioned work or this particular piece, so ideas come to you because it's already defined, or do you still have the opportunity to kind of think in a more global way and say, I'm not sure where this idea is going to take me yet?
I like to have both projects going now. So now up until last year, I didn't work on commission. I'd never written on commission. And now I do that some, and that's a really great challenge. I says, here are the rules. I like rules, and also here's the sort of corners of freedom that you have. But then I kind of keep other projects for myself, like Ritornello, that's really just for me. And I have other things sort of in the pipeline where I let it go wherever it needs to go.
Oh, that's wonderful. What role does improvisation play for you? Because you're a practicing performer as well as a composer, and oftentimes composers, as they move on, devote more and more time to composition, less and less time to performing, and you refuse to do that. You're still very much in a lot of worlds. Does improvisation play a part in all that you do? Is it important? Is that an important skill for you and for 21st century musicians now? Does it influence the way that you think as a composer or as you perform?
I actually don't. It's so deeply ingrained in what I do. I don't think about it. I don't think like, oh, improvisation. I should think about improvising now. It's just a sense of having a grasp of the musical language that where you can. Right now, I have no idea what's going to come out of my mouth next, but you just sort of keep speaking. But you're sort of trained in a way that you can sort of control the improvisation when it comes out. When I'm actually playing in my gigs now, like with Roomful of Teeth and with Acme, there's not often improvisation involved in the performance, but somewhat in rehearsal, you know. You kind of, and when I was writing music for Roomful of Teeth, there's a little bit of improvisation rehearsal. So let's try this, let's try that. And now when I write music, I rely a lot on sort of what intuitively comes out. I've started sort of I record a lot of my own improvisations, and then you sort of have the clay to, you know, carve out and shape and build the house from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So here at DePauw, we're knee deep into trying to change the modern music school to reflect more of the 21st century skills necessary today. Right. As we were talking about, what was old is new again, and I think the way of the performance specialist is waning a bit as those people who are fully embracing their musicianship in all kinds of ways comes to life. And you kind of are your own genre. I mean, how do you categorize your music?
The music that I
you write.
Oh, ooh, gosh. It's very. I know it's really inspired by older music. Renaissance, in a way, people have said, and for me, actually, sort of the structure and architecture of Brahms. I really think about that a lot. The way he lifts and settles. I don't really know what genre it is.
Right, and I think that's another part of it is that the genre boundaries are just going out the window now. They don't really matter anymore.
Yeah.
And the classical training that you have influences what you're doing. We hear it, but no one would refer to your music as classical in the style of Mozart or Brahms because it's bigger, it's newer, it's different than that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, I mean, we all grew up listening to a lot of different music, and I didn't want anyone to tell me what I couldn't write, so I avoided that for a long time. So there's a little bit of folk in there. I definitely love hymns and folk music. There's a little bit of influence of this band called Tune Yards, a woman named Meryl Garbus. It's just the kind of bravery that she has. That's in there.
Yeah, that's something that I love about you and about Roomful of Teeth is the bravery, just fearlessness. Let's go do this. Just take it on. Let's do it.
Open your mouth really wide. Say ah.
Exactly. What will you want to be able to say about your career at that point? You know, you're at the beginning of an incredibly promising career, and it's just unfolding before you. So what do you want to be able to say?
I definitely want to be able to say that my music moved someone and meant something, and was designed really well so that it was moving on a few different levels, and that I was a really good person, and that sort of created a better world around me than was there before.
That's terrific.
I hope that's okay.
That's great. Thank you for coming into chat.